My friends, pay attention to this situation. What you are about to witness is not a simple diplomatic dispute or an adjustment in foreign policy. It is the open, formal, and structured outbreak of a war against a parasite that has been devouring our structures from within for decades. The United States Department of State, led by Secretary Marco Rubio, has just made it official that the far left's diplomatic free ride are over. The order coming from Washington now is just one. Disney is over for those who attack Western civilization in the morning and spend their vacations in Florida in the afternoon. To understand the scale of this military and political movement that is emerging in the United States, we need to abandon superficial analysis. The radical left and the globalists have never been able to and will never be able to defeat the United States in direct military confrontation. No army, aircraft carrier, or ballistic missile has managed to penetrate the fabric of American society. And faced with this insurmountable barrier, they changed their tactics. They started what military intelligence calls fourth-generation warfare, a hybrid war. And the strategy used is exactly the same Soviet playbook of four-step subversion described by Yuri Bezmenov. Demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. They understand that to bring down a solid structure, you don't attack the walls from the outside. You use the metaphor of civilizational termite. Occupim doesn't make noise. It doesn't blow up your house. It infiltrates the foundation silently through the cracks you don't see, and it devours the wooden foundation from the inside. The structure on the outside still has the same paint. The facade looks intact, but the core is hollow. And just a little gust of wind is enough for the roof to collapse on your own head. That's how the radical left infiltrated the democratic system around the world. And in the United States, Occupim corroded and took control of the Democratic Party. And today, on the streets of New York, in Chicago, or at the Capitol, you see elected politicians openly preaching the dismantling of the institutions of the American Republic. In Brazil, this corrosion is even more serious. Civilizational Occupim has taken over the institutions and even the Supreme Federal Court itself. And the ultimate goal is the same on every continent: to destroy the foundation of the traditional family, dismantle the roles of father and mother, undermine the authority of faith, and above all, criminalize individual sovereignty and freedom of expression. And this is where the reality check implemented by the American government comes in. Marco Rubio officially announced the final crackdown. The United States government has imposed heavy visa restrictions, asset freezes, and persona non grata status on far-left terrorists, and all individuals or groups who finance them, incite them, or adhere to their agendas. Now, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video because it takes a lot of work to make it, my friends. Rubio set his sights directly on organized urban guerrilla groups like Antifa. You've heard about that. But the shockwave is going to sweep across the entire continent. This means it's the end of the line for what I call iPhone communists. Write down this metaphor: iPhone communists. Look at the level of concrete actions that the American government has determined to hunt down these groups. Mapping and neutralization. Look at this word: neutralization. The official order is to prioritize the rapid identification and total neutralization of violent secular political groups that carry anti-American, anarchist, and radically pro-transgender ideologies. Did you get that? Point number 2. Tracking of members. The intelligence apparatus, CIA, NSA, satellites, even the connections that American services have with Mossad in Israel will track this. All constitutional tools will be available to map the activities of these radicals within the country, identify their members, and track all their connections with international organizations like Antifa. 3. Operational strangulation. The order is to use the full force of the law to paralyze and incapacitate these groups operationally before they can maim or murder innocents. And that's where kinetic force comes in. That's where the aircraft carrier comes in. That's where special forces come in, right? Because it's not restricted only to the ground, but it's also about the connections these groups have with international organizations. And if the origin of the violence inside the United States is out there, they go after it. Now, the 4th step, the end of the growing number of victims. The report points out that the government will no longer tolerate politically motivated murders of Christians and conservatives committed by left-wing extremists, right? Directly limiting the case of the murder of Charlie Kirk, carried out by a radical who supported extreme transgender ideologies. Attack on sponsors and states. The most lethal part of the strategy doesn't just target the activist on the street. The United States will carry out diplomatic, financial, cyber, and even covert operations against any state, country, or enemy government that helps or sponsors these violent left-wing radicals. And then we have China, Iran, Qatar, we had Venezuela, okay, Russia, among others, North Korea, right? Notice that Trump opened the floodgates, huh? They won't just wait for the attack passively anymore. They're going on the offensive. The end of the Red-Green Alliance. The government has made it a priority to destroy what they call the Red-Green Alliance, which is the union and the perverse collaboration between the far left and Islamic extremists. And this is serious, and the impact is global. This means that any politician, NGO, financier, or government anywhere in the world that decides to sponsor, hide, or fund far-left factions will be treated as a target of American counterterrorism. The war has changed, and what the radical left used to call activism and protest, Washington now officially calls terrorism. Think about the panic and hypocrisy that are running rampant right now in newsrooms and luxury condominiums. The restriction directly and humiliatingly affects organizations operating in Brazil, such as the MST and the network of influencers and politicians who support them. It's very easy to preach anti-Americanism, shout down with imperialism, and at the end of the year, put your family in business class to travel to New York, shop in Miami, or spend New Year's Eve in Times Square. The net is now closing in on figures who built their fortunes, cradles, and political power by demonizing American capital, but who love to indulge in its luxuries. People like Wagner Moura, who lives in the United States and keeps criticizing the system that supports him. The moral crackdown targets the inconsistency of radical lawmakers like Erika Hilton and Guilherme Boulos, or the digital hysteria machine led by André Janones. The message from Washington is cold and direct. If you consider us the great enemy of humanity, we will respect your wish. You will be treated as our enemy and will never set foot on our territory again. War now has practical consequences. What scares the left the most is not the visa restrictions, but the fact that their narrative is being dismantled live. But the political establishment and progressive forces here in Brazil have a lethal defense mechanism to try to hold on to power. Censorship shielded by law. They know they can't convince you using logic, so they change the game. They are turning laws into handcuffs, where the penal code is rewritten to jail you for your opinion. Look at the perverse maneuver by Congresswoman Tabata Amaral trying to push forward the so-called misogyny law. The bill, under the pretext of protecting women, is deliberately designed to criminalize any political opposition on the internet. It's the creation of the perfect thought crime. If this law passes, in a few days, it will be forbidden to publicly criticize the performance, projects, or stance of figures like Tabata Amaral or Erika Hilton. All it takes is labeling your criticism as misogyny, and you will be banned, prosecuted, and silenced. Do you see the danger? And we just saw this repulsive strategy in practice this week. First Lady Janja da Silva was legitimately questioned on social media about her excessive and non-transparent spending of public money. Instead of being accountable to the taxpayer, what was the government's automatic defense? She went public to claim that questioning her spending is an act of misogyny. Do you understand the stakes of this game and the level of manipulation we're facing? The civilizational termite wants society to be silenced by force, not by the barrel of a rifle like in the old dictatorships of Cuba or Venezuela. The new dictatorship crushes its citizens with the stroke of a pen, creating protection laws where only one side has the right to speak, while the tax-paying citizen becomes a prisoner of his own words. That's why this video is unlikely to be recommended, because the system is constantly trying to suppress and choke off the channels that have the courage to expose the reality the mainstream media hides. And that's exactly why we need to organize ourselves as a tactical force in the digital arena. I'm running for the iBest Award in the Political Influencer category. Yes, my friends, our community of elite analysts needs to show its strength against the enemies of freedom. Each of our votes is a bomb in their newsroom. And I'm asking for your vote now. It takes less than 30 seconds. The link is in the description and in the first pinned comment. Vote and prove that the system doesn't control our minds. And we went from 40th place to the top 10 in the national ranking. Currently holding at least 6th place. 5th place, okay? So vote every day until we secure our spot in the next phase for the national top 20. We're growing a lot. Now take a look. Because the gravity of what we're facing becomes clear when you look at the most dystopian, bizarre, and suicidal alliance of the 21st century. If you go out on the streets today, from Berlin to São Paulo, passing through London and New York, you'll see a phenomenon that defies sanity. Far-left radicals, gender activists, big government advocates, cultural Marxists, feminists, marching arm in arm with Islamic extremist radicals, shouting the same slogans against the West. This is the definitive proof that the war is not about human rights. In the real world, in the Middle East, under the laws of the Ayatollahs or deep Sharia, the Islamic radical wouldn't tolerate the existence of the American or European leftist activist for even 10 seconds. They would be subjugated, enslaved, or eliminated instantly. But in the West, they form a pact. Why? Because they both have the same ultimate target: to destroy the foundations of Judeo-Christian civilization, to undermine the idea of the strong family unit, to break the concept of a sovereign nation, and to wipe individual freedom and capitalism off the map. The termite eating away at civilization has joined forces with the fire of extremism. And it is exactly this strategic aberration that the United States is determined to wipe off the map with the new national security decree. War has been declared, the limit of patience has evaporated, and the masks have come off for all to see. We are the front line of resistance against mass disinformation, and I want to know if you've already woken up to the magnitude of this operation. We need to map out the shielded elite of our community, the current ones. Therefore, your verdict today is proof that we understand their tactics. Go to the comments section now and type our 2 keywords from this analysis: termite exposed and no censorship ever. I repeat, termite exposed and no censorship ever. Type these phrases. This is not just about the algorithm, it's staking out territory against the silencing system. Type it now and make your position clear. The final and undeniable truth of this cultural war is that in the corporate world and in business, those who don't control their own narrative inevitably become hostages to the narrative of others. And today, the most valuable currency in the world is attention. And for you as a business owner or leader in your field, the greatest pain is being the best at what you do and still stuck in obscurity. You have a business that saves your clients' lives, but you feel like social media only gives the spotlight to frivolity and cringe-worthy dances. And 15 years ago, when I started in radio and television, I discovered that authority requires military precision. Anyone who wants to be recognized today needs to accept change. Every modern business has become a media business. Look at Kimed and at Havan stores. They turned one of them, the pharmaceutical company, into a brutal content machine to triple profits and break out of the bubble. Look at Luciano Hang from Havan. He showed his face, said he was the owner, and started talking to all Brazilians. He keeps opening stores one after another in the middle of the economic chaos that is Brazil. Your brand can no longer be outsourced. The leader must give orders and put himself out there. Recording on your phone without a plan no longer works. The digital world needs strategy. What if you want to own your authority, build an indestructible name, land the biggest clients in your niche, and create a completely strategic structure? Using the same tactical logic that gets me over 50 million monthly views on social media in detail. All of this monetized in dollars. It's time for you to break out of the bubble, to learn how to overcome this barrier that's keeping you invisible. On August 16th, I'll be here fully focused, in my fully in-person immersion inside my studio in Curitiba with my team, where I'll guide you closely. In the consulting session, the final step in building your authority, But the numbers are exact. There are only 10 seats available, and when the 10th person comes in, the steel door closes. And if you want to learn how to break out of the bubble and overcome this barrier, there's a QR code on the screen, a secure link in the description, and in the first pinned comment. I'll be waiting for you here on August 16th, and are you tired of wasting time trying to find a good movie or a good series? I have some amazing tips for you to just sit back and enjoy with your family. No woke stuff, none of that annoying leftist whining, by the way. So the link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that appears on your screen. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video. It takes a lot of work to make these, my friends. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you at our next meeting. Until then.